Welcome to the Biz Doctor Podcast, my love letter to business owners the world over. I'm your host, Lauren Goldstein, award-winning business consultant and advisor fondly nicknamed the Biz Doctor by my clients. I help business owners who are burning the candle at both ends diagnose what is actually keeping them buried in the day-to-day busy work, and then formulate a treatment plan to adjust their business and team to fit them, so they can take a breath and a vacation and have more fun making a bigger impact than ever. So grab your favorite beverage and your earbuds, and let's dive into our latest episode. Have you ever been caught in the cycle of getting ready to get ready to get ready, and then maybe launching whatever it is you've been perfecting? Well, as one recovering perfectionist to another, that is exactly what I want to talk about today. The ways that the 3.3 pounds of matter between your ears might be sabotaging you, your business, and your success without you even knowing it. Because it's a super sneaky bugger. But lucky for you, I'm going to put on my neuroscience hat today and help you outsmart your brain. And make sure you stick around to the very end when I talk about resulting and how it stifles your creativity and leads to consistently poor decision making. Welcome back to the Biz Doctor Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Goldstein, and today I want to talk about something I personally dealt with a lot through the years, and something that I see other entrepreneurs struggle with too: making perfect the enemy of good. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You've had a great idea for a new product, service, book, you name it. So you put all your blood, sweat, and tears into it, but you never feel like it's quite ready for prime time. Sometimes this means that it goes into the graveyard of half-finished projects or ideas. Other times it results in what I was famous for, a secret launch. You know, that sneaky thing you do where you put it into the wild and tell no one and then go, oh well, guess it wasn't such a good thing after all. But sometimes you have someone in your life who gives you a metaphorical smack on the forehead and tells you to just ship that shit. I can tell you that the former happens far more than the latter, so let's fix that, shall we? First, it's important to remember that your brain's number one mission in life is to keep you alive. What that unfortunately means is that most of the time it sees anything that is unfamiliar or even smells like change as a threat to life. Quite literally, it thinks that if you send the newsletter announcing a new service, you will well and surely be shunned from society and, yep, you guessed it, die. Sounds dramatic, but it's true. And most of the time we have no idea that it's doing it. That's the craziest part. It is so good at protecting us, we don't even realize that it's actually keeping us stuck. When you're working on something and it's, say, 98% there, that's the time to rip the fear of death Band-Aid off and get it out there to get feedback. I know. This used to be one of my most feared things, but guess what? Feedback is just that, feedback. It isn't good, it isn't bad, it's just information. Information you can actually use to your advantage to adjust, improve, pivot, you name it. The point is, you can't sell it, share it, or change the world if it isn't out there. So get it out there. I mean, really out there. The second thing that keeps us stuck is creating in a vacuum. Now, if you listen to my interview with Tan Pham, we talked a little bit about this, but this one might blow your mind, so stick with me. Oftentimes, when we're creating something or testing a new product or service, we do a lot of internal discussions and very little external research. So let me illuminate why this isn't supportive for your business. First, as wild as it sounds, sometimes what we think our clients or customers want is not actually what they want or think they need. And here's the kicker: we'll pay for. Or my favorite, the problem we know they have, they don't realize they have because it's either disguised as something else, probably because they call it something slightly different, or what we see as a root problem, they are just focused on the problem that is most obvious. Have you seen that before? This is the beauty of launch and learn. And let me tell you, just saying these words makes me want to vomit. So if you got a little queasy hearing them, you're not alone. I want to tell you a story to illustrate this. I had a client many years ago that came to me for team and profitability challenges. So I put on my Biz Doc hat and we dug in. Partway through my diagnostic, she told me about this amazing program she created to support her clients. It was X amount of videos and handouts, etc., and it would help them so much. Sound familiar? When I asked her how it went and what her clients thought, she sheepishly said they didn't like it and they never used it. That was not what I was expecting, and I was bummed for her. So I asked her how she came up with the program, and she said she just thought it would be a good complement to her existing work with clients. And that right there, folks, is the rub. She launched something based on a hypothesis without real-life data. Been there myself, so no judgment, but one of my favorite things to do that I learned from my time in the medical field is a research study. The premise is simple. Whatever you want to teach or launch, test it out in real time live before you ever go evergreen. This allows you to get feedback at a much faster pace, and my favorite part is you don't spend months perfecting something that may not be what the people both want and will pay for. And you gotta have both. You actually build it with your people, and it takes all the heavy lifting and stress off of you and gives your clients what they really want, which is what I call a win-win. It's a lot like building a house from the ground up. You don't wait until you've moved in completely to test the water and the electric. You do it when the walls are open and easily accessible, so you don't have to redo something and cause more work down the road. Before we dive into the next bit, I want to take a second to share with you something that I've seen drastically change businesses and teams for the better. Imagine waking up every morning with a team that knows exactly what is expected of them and how to achieve success, without you having to micromanage them. Imagine how much time and dollars you will save by hiring the right team member from the start. Not to mention getting the most out of every current member of your team. That is what's possible with our tried and tested tool, the Golden Key Scorecard. The scorecard is a simple, impactful, and fillable tool for managing your team, ditching inefficiency, and I guarantee will help you stop playing whack-a-mole chasing team docs all over the place. It's as easy as filling out a form. If you want to get out from under your business, shifting from business operator to business owner, and take your business to the next level while reclaiming your time, then our Golden Key Scorecard is just the ticket. Our scorecard provides the time-tested framework and process to get you and your team out of the weeds and into a well-oiled machine that can scale without you. It's time for you to run your business instead of the other way around. Become an expert in this critical piece of the foundation to creating a high-performing team. Download the Golden Key Scorecard for free at goldenkeypartnership.com/go. Now back to the show. Let's take it one step further with one of my favorite neuroscience facts and revisit an oldie but a goodie. Did you know that your brain actually can't tell the difference between what is happening in quote unquote real life versus what is vividly imagined? To your brain, it is all the same type of story. And here's the kicker. The stories you tell yourself are either hurting you or helping you, and the choice is completely yours. That's why when you put garbage in, fear, limiting beliefs, the news, negativity, etc., you get garbage out. Whereas if you put in good things, positivity, hope, growth, mentorship, curiosity, love, etc., that's what you get out. Because here's the craziest, mind-bendingest thing ever. We are all making it up. Yep. Don't believe me? Let's dig deeper. Every story we have is made up based on our own filters, beliefs, habits, traumas, etc. So whatever happened isn't actually important. What's important is the story that you create around it. Hence why I said we're all making it up. Here's an example I had with one of my employees that I'm fractional COO for. Now, it turns out that when his boss got promoted from COO to CEO and the business started growing, he created a whole bunch of unsupportive stories about why his quote-unquote boss no longer had time to talk to him every day. Things like, I'm not valued, they don't trust me, they don't care. Clearly all unsupportive stories that were not even remotely true. Versus stories that he could have created that were empowering might have been, they trust me to be autonomous, I don't need to be micromanaged because I'm a valuable member of the team who can do it on their own, I'm crushing it and they trust me to do great work, I got this, any number of things. But do you see how these 3 stories would have been much more empowering versus the ones that he created? Let's do one more real life example. Let's say someone doesn't respond to your email about working together. One story to weave is that you suck, they don't want to buy your product, and heck, while we're at it, let's just throw in there that this is just another piece of evidence that you are in fact a failure. Not supportive. Conversely, a much more supportive story is detaching from the outcome and recognizing this person is probably busy. Your email might have actually ended up in spam and they never saw it. Or something I am personally an offender at. They saw your email and mentally responded to it, but had a squirrel pop up and either forgot to actually press send or legit responded in their mind. I am guilty of this. So do you see how your brain might not actually be doing you any favors and instead keeping you firmly in your comfort zone, or worse, stuck in an eddy of limitation with the unsupportive stories it's creating? The good news is you have complete power and control over your thoughts in these stories. You just have to be self-aware and observe them when you start to go down a rabbit hole that is counter to your vision, your goals, and not supportive, because now, listen close. This is very important. The only conversation that matters is the one that's happening right now. In the present. It doesn't matter what happened 10 minutes ago or what is happening moments from now, because you can't change the past any more than you can control the future. The only time you can impact your life is now. And the only thing you can control in this moment is the stories you create, the committed action you take towards your vision, and the reactions you have to different situations. When we have the willingness to be curious when our brain starts to stop us, everything changes. You go from being a passenger to a driver, and boy, oh boy, does life start getting more fun, freeing, and a heck of a lot easier when you shift this, don't hate me for saying it, victim mentality. Now, the last thing I want to leave you with is the juiciest. The dangers of what author Thinking in Bets, Making Smarter Decisions When You Don't Have All the Facts, Annie Duke calls resulting, and its evil stepsister, hindsight bias. See, resulting is when we judge a decision as good or bad based on results. Annie cautions us about this because it creates doubt, trepidation, and hesitation in future decision-making. She shows that the key to making better decisions is to parse outcome from decision quality. For instance, if you fire an underperforming CEO and the replacement also fails, it doesn't mean that that initial decision to remove the first CEO was erroneous. Rather than second guess your original decision, you should focus your energy on reviewing the recruiting process that led you to selecting the underperforming replacement CEO. I'll give you another real-life example that happened to me recently, and how reading about resulting in hindsight bias hit me like a bolt of lightning and shook me out of what could have been a self-sabotaging spiral of doubt. A few months ago, in my role as fractional COO, the leadership team and I decided that one of the critical hires we needed to get the CEO out of the weeds was an executive assistant. We went through the scorecard, every nook and cranny, going back and forth to make sure this really was the best hire for him right now. 2 weeks later, I'd hired an all-star EA, but we quickly realized that this role was not what we really needed, and she was sinking fast. Now, because I always look at leadership first when an employee is struggling to see if we set them up for failure, I started really digging in. This particular challenge had me really wrapped around the axle because, to be honest, I pride myself in successful hires, and up until this moment, in 12 years, I had only made one bad hire. And funny enough, it happened to me for me. Thank God, not a client. So this was what I would call my first quote-unquote client fail. So where did I go wrong? How did this happen? All the questions. Well, at the end of the day, what we uncovered by bringing on an EA is that he didn't need a traditional EA like we thought he did. His business is very tactical and technical, so what he needed was someone with institutional knowledge that could be his Robin to his Batman. So as much as it felt like a failure because the quote-unquote result wasn't good, when we did the full post-mortem, it was clear that we made the best decision in the moment in time. And thankfully, because we hired the EA, it helped us realize the accountabilities and things she took off his plate, while correct and important, were not really where he was needing support. So in this example, we can see how it would have been very easy for me to result with this and use this as evidence of where I was not good at something, and maybe question my decision-making with future hires that I support my clients with. But because I've read this book, I realized that the decision was sound. The result of the decision was not ideal. But again, they were separate. So I want you to think about the last time you made a decision that you thought in the moment was a good decision that maybe had a quote-unquote bad result. And I encourage you to sever the two. Make the decision separate from the result and just look at the decision versus the result so that you're not connecting them and unintentionally sabotaging your future decision making. Annie also tells a great story about how in 2015 Super Bowl, the Seahawks were on the 1-yard line of the Patriots. 20 seconds left in the game, second down. The Seahawks have one timeout and they trail by 4. Everyone expects that Pete Carroll is going to call a handoff. He's going to hand it off to Marshawn Lynch, who's going to try to barrel through the defensive line. If he gets it in, then they call a timeout, and then maybe he'll get another try at it. But Pete Carroll doesn't do that. He actually calls a pass play. Russell Wilson passes the ball, and Malcolm Butler intercepts it in the end zone, and the Seahawks lose the Super Bowl in a flash. The next day, the headlines were not kind. There wasn't a whole lot of discussion about whether it was a good play or a bad play or what the reasoning was behind it. Most of the discussion was whether it was the worst play in Super Bowl history or just the worst play in football history, period. Now, if he hadn't passed it and they still lost, we know the headlines would be different, right? They would just read, Seahawks lose the Super Bowl or Patriots win the Super Bowl. There wouldn't have been this discussion about how this decision was so bad. And that right there is the danger in resulting. When we can't separate the decision from the result, then we start to question whether our decisions were sound. But again, as I shared a few moments ago, what I want to encourage you to do is when you make decisions, recognize that you made the best decision in that moment. And the results, much like poker, and if you read this book, you'll see she's actually a professional poker player, and that's what most of this book is about, the lessons on taking risks from poker, that after you make a decision, you can't control a lot of things. Sometimes it's just luck. Like in this case, with the pass, there was a 4% probability that it would be intercepted. So by all standards here, it should have resulted in a touchdown, and they would have won. But luck didn't have it that way. So the decision was sound. The result of that decision was not ideal. To take it one step further, she also talks about how hindsight bias is the tendency for highly uncertain past events to be thought of as predictable because you know the result. In other words, the tendency after an outcome is known to treat the outcome as inevitable. And then in most cases, if the result was not what you wanted, use it as proof of your poor decision-making skills. So if we use the hindsight bias with the football analogy, we can all say, that was such a dumb call. Of course he shouldn't have passed it. But in reality, nobody knew what the outcome was going to be, and the probability that was going to get intercepted was very minimal. So do you see how this is a dangerous play that can suddenly give you analysis paralysis, make you nervous to make any decision because God forbid it'd be the wrong one, and ultimately keep you stuck? It also, interestingly enough, can have the opposite effect, causing overconfidence in your ability to predict other future events, leading to unnecessary risks because you've convinced yourself that you accurately predicted an event before it occurred, aka knew it all along. So I'll leave you with this. Don't let your brain convince you that you're in danger of dying if you put yourself out there. Watch the stories you tell yourself. Don't result based on your decisions. Because of all the people in the world, the person we spend the most time with is ourselves. So be kind to yourself, be courageous. Don't get stuck in the quicksand of resulting or hindsight bias. You and your business will thank you. All right, that's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for listening in. If anything I shared sparked something in you, I'd love for you to share this episode with your friends and fellow business owners. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you're the first to get notified when our next episode is live and ready for your ears. And I'd also love to hear from you. So let's connect. Tag or DM me on Instagram at It's Lauren Goldstein or LinkedIn or wherever you hang out on the interwebs. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time. Listening to the Biz Doctor Podcast. Now, I like to say that friends don't let friends WebMD your business. So if you're wondering what your next steps could be, here are some options for you. No matter what, head to the show notes or to my website, goldenkeypartnership.com, for some impactful resources to support you getting out from under your business. That's also where you'll find the links to learn more about our services and how we support business owners, just like you, who are ready to make the successful jump from business operator in the trenches to visionary business owner with more freedom and flexibility. All of that info is on our website, so pop on over to learn more or get in touch. goldenkeypartnership.com. Finally, if you love the Biz Doctor podcast, I'd be so grateful if you would share it with your friends and network and give us a 5-star rating or review wherever you listen to your podcast.
This is Story Studio Network.